Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Glenn H., what up, man?
What's up, man? How you doing, Mikey?
I'm doing good today, man. I feel I had the double tall.
I can tell.
Yeah. So a little supercharged this morning.
I can tell. You know what? I always love says we're on our own path of recovery.
Right.
And part of that path for me, I mean, just as we get ready for our guest here, Table for Three. I love
ding.
Love
right.
Table for Threes, right? But there is a very painful part of my path.
Mm-hmm.
The start.
Mm-hmm.
My path today is not painful.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a period of time, maybe 12, maybe 18 months. It was painful,
mm-hmm.
physically, mentally, and it just took a lot to get to the next minute. Sometimes
mm-hmm.
the next hour,
mm-hmm.
and I'm just grateful that I hung in there and stuck with it. It's less painful today.
It is,
but it's very rewarding today.
Yeah, and I don't think we do that because we only get together for a half hour every week, right? I don't think we really get to unpack just how painful it was, and it's not the detail, it's the depth of pain in our soul that we had at one point. And yeah, some of it was based on detail. We didn't have the house, we lost the house, the car, the wife, we lost stuff. But we lost ourselves, and that was the painful part about it, because you had no connection with the only person you had, which was yourself. And I don't think we go into depth, but then again, I don't want people driving off the road going,
but I think it's good to paint a realistic picture. I saw some person on social media yesterday. They were 6 days sober.
Yeah.
And all they were talking about the pain, and they want the pain to go away, and they're pissed because the pain hasn't gone away.
Right.
In 6 days,
right? So interesting.
Yes. I'm like, man, my pain lasted 18 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's because of my path, right? But hey, I'm grateful that the pain part is gone,
mm-hmm.
right? The pain I have today is pain of growth.
Right.
That's a lot different than having pain pushed upon you. But I'm grateful to be here with you, man.
Hey, I'm telling you, good segue, because we do have a table for three today. And before we get into it, I just got to tell you, it's like you say, it's funny how these things work. And I feel this pain thing that we had, and it takes time to heal. The table for three, the guest we have this morning is Derek Castleman, and one of the chapters of his books talks about how you have to appreciate that things are going to take time. And I was really appreciative, and it's so funny that you bring that up, because that was one of the chapters in the book. Talked about embracing the fact that things, Derek, don't always go on our timeline, do they?
No, they don't. Actually, that's why I thought it was really interesting the way that you guys were kind of talking back and forth there, because I think that's kind of one of the most interesting things in recovery, I'd have to say, is I don't know if it's more, and maybe I think this might be a thing, is that in our addictions, we're so used to getting that instant satisfaction of whatever our drug of choice is. Mm-hmm. And now we're hitting sobriety, and we want kind of like that instant gratification, that instant satisfaction. Why isn't it coming fast enough? Like, why is this not?
Right.
And honestly, I think even in my own recovery, and even as writing that book, the thing that I started realizing more and more was, it's kind of funny, and it's hard to say this to like the newcomers, but a big thing to understand is that it's just, how long did we spend in our addictions just destroying or messing with our lives?
Mm-hmm.
And why would we expect everything to be good just instantly?
Yeah, right. Just add water and everything's going to go away. The relationships will be healed. A car's going to show up in your driveway, and you're going to have the dream job that you always wanted, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way, does it, Derek?
No, it doesn't. And I think it's just that's a huge thing to understand is that, things get better, but it takes time. Time has to, So, yeah, it was really interesting how you guys were kind of talking about at the beginning here.
So, the book that Derek authored is a book called A Stoic Guidebook. A Stoic Guidebook for Recovery, Ancient Philosophy for a Better Life After Addiction. And I've read the book, and it is it's funny because I went into it going, I never looked at the great ancient philosophies in life. I picture a little Buddha dude, with little tambourines and going humada, 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 and that's philosophy. The book opened my eyes to the grander appreciation of philosophies that are built on virtues that are built for the betterment of myself. I mean, I loved reading what I read, and I want Derek to kind of unpack it a little bit. But as he entered the coffee shop, we said, "Oh man, we only got a half hour, and then we got to blow," And he's like, "I know," so we're going to try and cram a lot into 20 minutes, but I think it's worthwhile, and I'll close and I'll open with saying it's a good book it's a great resource to have on your bookshelf. And the first thing I want to do, Derek, is a Stoic is a philosophy, but let's call that with a capital S, because my brain went into it. Well, I remember the word Stoic. Oh, somebody was Stoic. Oh, he's Stoic. Okay, let's clear up that differentiator right off the bat so that people don't think that Stoic is Stoic.
No, it's true. I remember even when I first started studying this philosophy, and I would tell my mom about it and different family members about it and friends, and they thought it was something horrible because we do think of Stoic as kind of this unemotional person that has been unmoved and nothing will affect him.
He saw the plane crash and he was stoic about it.
Yeah, and and that's why they have such the distinguishing between the two terms is that a Stoic with a capital S is someone who studies the philosophy, whereas the Stoic person with the lowercase s is who we usually think of. Because what's interesting is that the Stoic philosophers, and maybe this is why that other term, the lowercase one, came from. Yeah, they're dealing with a lot of emotional stuff and regulating your emotions, but it's more of in a way that what they want you to do is regulate your negative emotions. It's kind of this idea of, are there ways to sort of deal with our negative emotions in more of a healthier way and be able to handle the difficulties of life? And really they want to emphasize having more positive emotions from you, And so really I think that's kind of maybe where the two terms related. But at the same time, a Stoic who follows the philosophy, if they see a plane crash or something like that, they're going to be impacted by that.
Yes,
it's going to be something that they do view as tragic. It's just they're going to have their own ways of dealing with those emotions themselves.
Right, great. I'm going to play Glenn here for a second because Glenn is going to want to back the bus up here a couple of steps, a block or so. What made you write a book? I mean, and how does Stoic philosophy blend into recovery? So he's going to ask those two questions. He doesn't have to talk. He's got a sore throat. So
and then also thirdly,
I speak
Glenn very well. And then thirdly, how does that specifically relate to your story?
Right.
Okay. Well, the way that Stoicism kind of related to my recovery, I'll kind of start with there and lead into the other ones, is that, I was it was during the times of COVID, locked away, in our houses. And I'd had, what was it? Maybe a year and a half or so of recovery underneath my belt. And I was kind of in this moment where I was sort of feeling that stagnation. I'd worked the steps and stuff like that, and I had my sobriety underneath me, but there were all these kind of questions or things that I'd been wondering, or this missing piece to everything. And it was funny because it was actually, I was staying at a sober living, and it was one of my roommates in sober living who was the one that actually introduced me to the whole concept of studying this. He, me and him used to have just deep like conversations, and he was like, man, he's like, you should like really check out this philosophy called Stoicism. It might start answering some of those questions. And so that's when I started looking it up, and I was kind of like floored and fascinated with with what it was saying, because I guess getting at what the whole purpose of Stoicism is it's a philosophy of life. It's kind of trying to look at, well, what is the meaning of life? Like, what is the purpose that we have here? And what the Stoics kind of in their philosophy of life, there's all different types of views of what the meaning of life is. And for them, their view of what the meaning of life is that we are here to be the best person that we possibly can be. We are here to live a virtuous life. If you can every single day of your life strive for being a person with good morals, good character, be virtuous. If you can strive for that every single day, then you can finish off every single day knowing that you have lived the best way that you could possibly live. And for me, that was such a big point in recovery, because when I looked back at my addictions, that was something that was definitely missing in my life. In fact, even in my early sobriety, it was something that I was still missing, was like, what was my main goal every single day that I should be living other than just to be sober? Mm-hmm. And that seemed like a kind of a valid goal for me.
Right. And can I interject for a second? The book goes into Stoic, right? And the virtues and the philosophies and the approaches. But intertwined into the book is your story, Derek. And the fact, like, I'm getting goosebumps because the fact that you're sitting here talking about quality of life issues and purpose and all that stuff. I mean, you were a man beaten down by your addiction. I mean, everyone's got their own bottom, and you had a bottom, and then you found a new bottom, and then you found a new bottom, and your story is amazing because and I don't want to tell your story. I'd like you to share a little bit, but I mean, you were homeless. I mean, you were without worldly goods. You had busted down into the basement.
Oh yeah, no, pretty much. That was the second bottom was the first time I experienced homelessness, and just luckily I had enough in the bank that I could stay in like cheap motels, so I didn't get to feel the full extent. But my third and final bottom was just I had lost literally everything. I had destroyed my career. I was like a former teacher. My credential had been stripped from me, so I couldn't even work anymore because I was showing up to the classroom drunk. My family had given up on me through my other bottoms. My friends had given up on me as well. And so, no, I was definitely, that was the thing I do have to say that hitting that final bottom was the thing that did bring me to my step one, is what I always say in my story, is where I'm just like, okay, my life is definitely unmanageable. And like, I'm through with this all,
Right.
And I needed to find kind of like a whole new path at that point. So yeah, that final bottom was definitely one which, yeah, I was, like I always say, as I was just down to pretty much just the clothes on my back and had to start all over from there at that point,
It's amazing. And here we sit, and you've authored a book, you've embraced a philosophy, you're out there trying to support other people to a better way of life through sobriety and then through a philosophy or an approach of a better way of life, and I think it's amazing having read the depths of your story, just the heights that you sit at now. It amazes me.
Well, yeah, it's and I guess that was the other earlier question, which is why writing the book, and why did I choose to do this to help people in recovery as well? I know that it's something that worked for me. It's something that really, really helped out. I've searched online. There's other people that have found Stoicism helped in their own recovery. Another reason why I know that it's kind of really helpful is that Stoicism is actually like the basis of cognitive behavior therapy, which is CBT for anyone out there. If you've
Love
been
CBT.
to, yeah, and the guys who actually like created CBT basically said it's just Stoicism. It was literally, that was their guidelines for making that form of therapy. And I was just kind of like, well, if this therapy, you can even find, there's a book out there which is Cognitive Behavior Therapy and Stoicism that like a therapist actually wrote. And so I was just like, okay, there's other people out there that have read Stoicism and it helped their recovery. We know that CBT helps people with recovery. And so everything's pointing that this could be something, a philosophy that could help someone's own path. But the only issue at the time was no one ever just wrote a straight up Stoicism and recovery book.
Right.
Yeah, when I contacted other Stoic philosophers and they would give me advice, but they would always tell me, they're just like, well, like I'm not in recovery, or I've never been an addict, so this is the best advice I can give you. And I just kind of wanted to give someone else out there, in case they had my situation, a source that they could go to where they could see, okay, well, this is how this philosophy relates to recovery, pretty much.
Right. And go ahead, Glenn.
No, I just wondered how long ago was the book published? It was recent, right?
Yeah, the book came out just in September. Is when it came out.
2023.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's just a month and a half, almost coming up on almost 2 months ago.
That's great. And what kind of experiences is this leading to? I mean, connecting with who? I mean, how are you getting your story out there? Clearly coming on Sober.Coffee, get you in front of what, 12 million people, Mike? Or?
Well, just short of 12 million. About 12 million short of 12 million.
Yeah, so I mean, but how is this helping you move forward in your recovery journey?
It's helping me out because it's opening me up new connections with new people in recovery. Some people who have hit me up that have read the book and like kind of sharing with them. I'm going to be making an audiobook version of it, and people that were auditioned for the audiobook, they were people that were also in recovery. And so it started leading to conversations with them about that. I think one of the coolest things most recently that just actually happened last week is there's like another website out there called like the Sober Curator, which is kind of like we've
had them on the show. Yeah, totally. Right.
Yeah.
Gary,
so I'm going to be, I'm going to end up being one of the people that's contributing on like the Sober Curator, doing kind of like a philosophy column on that to start sort of like leading that out there. And so I think what has been really cool about the book is that not only has it been like an accomplishment for me to basically, in my own life, I always wanted to write a book ever since I was a kid, but it's now also putting me in touch with the recovery community in more deeper ways than like I was living before, where I was always going to meetings and I would connect with people online, but I'm finding myself on like a deeper path into the recovery community, which is actually leading to even a strong, like strengthening my own recovery and a stronger sense of like, feeling connected with even more people out there is what it's done.
It's all about connection.
Yeah, right? I love your service, and I love there's a piece. I mean, for if somebody's looking for encouragement to buy the book or read the book, and I think it's a good read, and it certainly isn't going to hurt anybody to read it because it's just so full of positive. But the one you framed it out in one, I don't know if these are your words or your co-author's words, but it's like. So Stoicism is like the serenity prayer on steroids. You bust it down and it's like that's it. And so if somebody's like, well, what's the book about? Well, that's what it is, man. It's like this serenity prayer, which anybody in recovery has heard, on steroids. Was that did you coin that or?
What's funny is I did not coin that phrase at all. That actually came from when I contacted another Stoic philosopher and I was asking him questions, and he was just like, I haven't dealt with addiction, and I haven't, I'm not in recovery, but I talked to someone else who had, and that's what the other person had said to this Stoic philosopher, is just like, oh, this is just the serenity prayer on steroids. And that's another reason why, like, I found it good for my own recovery, and I think it could help out others too, is that one of the things underlining everything. That's kind of one of the main points of what they're saying, is that, as we're trying to live this life to be the best person possible, one of the best ways to get to that point is if you're living the serenity prayer. Because I like to mention it so much, is that we hear the serenity prayer so often in meetings, and we hear it so often in recovery, that we can sometimes lose like sight of just like, if you truly live this to the deepest. But, for the Stoics, it's not about change and what you can change. It's about what you control and what you can't control. But if you can like really live this to its fullest, then like you can have leaps and bounds improvement in your life and living a good life.
Isn't that right? Yep, that's absolutely
I love
right.
the leaps and bounds.
So let me ask you this: because your base is in 12-step recovery. You're familiar with, then, I would imagine, pages 83 and 84 of the big book, which says, if you are painstaking about this phase of your development, you'll be amazed before you're halfway through, right? And then it goes on to list 12 promises that can come true. Where are you at with this phase of your life? Have the promises come through to you? Have you regained the relationship with? Did you have a job? Have you gained a relationship with your kids? Are all those things coming back into play now over time?
So where I'm at in my phase of life right now, and I guess this is the thing for anyone that might be out there new in recovery, that might be listening to this, is they've come back, but they come back in very unexpected ways.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
It's like, I have a career that I love. I have a career that I love now, but it wasn't something that I was doing like before or during my addictions.
Right.
It was something that I discovered in my recovery.
Right.
If I knew that I was going to be doing this kind of work, actually, no one would like. Before I went into sobriety, I would have never even fathomed that I would be doing what I'm
Derek,
doing now.
same thing with me.
Yeah,
it wasn't even on my radar.
Ditto.
Yeah. So the promises come true, but not the way you expect them, but they're even better.
Yeah, no, that's definitely what happens. But and the other thing too, I guess, to bring out there is when it comes to relationships. I actually just shared I was a speaker at a meeting just a few weeks back. And someone was talking to me about how they want their relationships back, but the guy was maybe like a few weeks into his sobriety, and I'm just like, he wanted his family back, and he wanted his kids back as soon as possible, like talking to him. And I was telling him, I'm like, no, it could happen. I'm not going to guarantee it, but it could happen, but it takes a while. Like, I have a relationship with my daughter that's stronger than ever. Like, we are really, really, really close, but it took me a while into my recovery to get to this point. And I kind of joke about it in the book, which is my daughter's 15, and she actually text messages me back now. And that's kind of an achievement when you realize that a 15-year-old will actually send back a text to you, So, yeah, the promises do happen. It's just the main thing is just time and just to understand, like I was saying, which is how you might view what the promises will be like in the first time that you read it. It may not be that way when you look back on it like years later, but you realize that they've come about.
Yeah, Mikey knows that I'm going to jump in.
Yep.
So the first time I heard the promises, first of all, I had been to 2 years worth of meetings, and they read them at the end of the meeting, and I turned to the guy next to me. I'm like, man, they're amazing. I said, when do we start reading those? He said, Glenn, we read them at the end of every meeting you've been to for the last 2 years. And I remember that night going home and making a list of all of the promises I wanted to come back. I wanted, my Volvo racing car back. I wanted the big square footage house. I wanted the big job and salary and money and relationships and all that. I remember going back to I live with a buddy, sober buddy, and I wrote them all down. And what I can tell you today with 100% assurance that every single one of those promises are coming true for me today, and they look nothing like that original list. Right? And the only thing I can attribute that to is I worked the third step. Is, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. And that's, so I have God's promises that he has blessed me with today, not Glenn's ego-driven will, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I love how that works. So, Derek, quick question: How long do you have sober?
I've been sober since April of 2018. So this is
awesome.
A little over 5 years and a few months.
That's great, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Great to write a book.
Yeah, it's just been, and for me, one of the things that I went into, and maybe you can clarify this a little bit, but one of the questions that I had going into reading the book, because I, like Glenn, took the third step very seriously, and took the second step very seriously, and I asked myself, is philosophy counting on Mike, right? Because I know Mike isn't strong enough to accomplish. I've learned that now over the decades. Mike's strength and Mike's wisdom is not enough. I need to rely on a power greater than myself. Can I have philosophy and spirituality at the same time? I finished reading this book with an emphatic yes. I've been given gifts, and I've been given the gift of thought. I've been given the gift of continued education, right? So the willingness and eagerness to grow and to learn. And I found that this has augmented my journey, certainly left me with no conflict about my spirituality. I'm right in check with that. Would you find that to be the case with Stoicism?
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. What people can misunderstand is they think that philosophy and spirituality have to battle against each other when they don't realize the fact that they can actually work with each other.
That's my point, right?
Yeah, many of the Stoics, they believe in God. God is their higher power, and that's the same case for me. And I like how you pick that up, which is, I know that early in our recovery, we need to turn our will over to our higher power, and rely on our higher power as we're getting our feet underneath us. But then it comes to this point to realize that at the same time, our higher power has also, part of that will is our higher power has put things inside of ourselves to help guide us. And it's kind of just embracing those gifts that the higher power, like you're saying, like your thought, your rational mind, the things that people don't realize, just the wonderful gift that's been given to us by our higher power, and being able to think.
Right.
And,
yeah, but one thing for me early in sobriety is my inner gut, right? So what you were referring to, Derek, it was messed up. Right. My compass was no longer following true north.
Right.
My compass was following self and ego. And so anything that came out of Glenn was either self or ego driven, right? Could care less about anybody else. My higher power for a year plus, almost 2 years, was my counselor, who I surrendered to him on the Friday afternoon floor. Like, dude, I will do anything you tell me to do. He was my instant higher power. Secondly was my sponsor. Thirdly was the guys in AA. Fourthly was the program of AA. Then eventually I found this thing called God, who I reconnected with and unlearned a lot of stuff. But I'm telling you, if anything in my first 18 months of sobriety that came from inner Glenn was wrong, because I was centered over time. My true north was off.
Right.
So I didn't have the confidence.
Right.
Because anything that I spewed out of me was off. So that's where I was working with my higher power, my counselor, my sponsor, they and the program of AA helped me recenter my true north, and now I got my true north back, which is my true God that I follow today, my true higher power.
So, do you mind? So, what would be interesting is what a Stoic would say to you is that, yeah, your inner gut was messed up, your true north was off, but realistically, deep down inside, you were using your rational mind because you were basically saying, my gut's messed up. I'm going to go talk to my counselor. I'm going to go to AA meetings. Those were actually all smart decisions that you were making yourself.
Right.
And so I think
so what drove that? And we used the term CBT earlier. I was working with, this was in my 4-month rehab program, working with the counselors and CBT and all that. And what they said is they brought my true north at that time. They said, look, because they were painting this picture of a cycle, right, of the cycle of addiction, and they asked me to paint a picture of who I was in 3rd grade, right? Okay. And they said that person is still in you, and I literally listed like 15 really cool attributes, and they're like, that's who you are, right? And as a person, and I identified, and I said, you know what, I like that. I can relate to that. That's who I was. I behaved like that, and then I started. So yeah, I somewhat see that, Derek, and I've been through some good help, to get where I'm at today.
Yeah, and I think here's the real beauty, is that having you on, Derek, and having read the book, you found, and I think Glenn, you'll appreciate this. You found recovery, the answers to recovery, and you found hope, and you found progress through 12-step recovery. But you get to a point, it's not a bad point, but it's just a point where you say, now what? Okay, I've stopped the drink. Things naturally are getting better. I know where my car is parked. I don't puke myself, I don't urinate myself. Okay, things are better. I smell better.
Please do to alcohol.
Right, but now what, right? And I think that's the real beauty of your writing is it says, here, there are some principles, some virtues you can now embrace and even achieve more. You can feel you can be more that person that you were meant to be if you follow these philosophies. And so I really it's got a big 5-star in my book, but we'll leave it up to other people. And by the way, very well written, very easy to read. I'm going to be honest. When you quote the Stoicism, I'm like, thee art thou, and for those part, do not have superfluous look indeed. Blah. I'm like, blah blah blah. Derek, tell me what they're saying, and then you come to my aid, and you tell me what they're saying. I'm like, okay, I get that, So yeah, I'd encourage people to read it. And how do people find you online then?
They can find me Instagram. I'm the Sober Stoic. I have a website also under the Sober Stoic, and the book can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. They can kind of reach out, find it anywhere there.
Well, I'd appreciate it if they give poor Mrs. X Bezos, 50 cents on the dollar. That lady's struggling, man. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Hey, Derek, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you. I appreciate the book. I hope to have you back on again. Again, it was a lot to unpack there in a half hour, but you did a great job. We really appreciate you, and we'll look for you on the curator as well. So
awesome! Yeah, thank you for having me on. Like I said, love your guys' podcast.
All right,
love you. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.